Should do a yearbook thing for the Ewoks. It's just like most likely to steal your car. That's Paplu. Most likely to steal your girl. That's Wicket. Welcome to the Fandom Portals podcast, the podcast that explores how fandoms can help us learn and grow. Hello, everybody. This week, I'm joined with Brash, as usual. How you going, Brash? Chub Dub. That is Ewokese for good thanks and you.
Actually, I could say, because I did actually try and learn a little bit of Ewokese, but there isn't really one for...
Look at it as a major in college. Does Google Translate do it into Ewokese?
I don't know, maybe. But I will say Yum Nub.
That's a good one.
Yum Nub, which means hooray.
Yes, that's a good one.
Hooray for being here.
Yub Nub.
Yub Nub.
Hooray in Ewok. The reason we're talking about Ewok language, everybody, is because this week, last week of recording, it has been Star Wars Day. May the 4th and May the 5th and May the 6th. I'm not sure what order they go in or how they're said, but I know May the 4th is May the 4th be with you. And as a result of that, all of the podcasts are doing all of the different kind of Star Wars reviews. So we thought that we would jump on the bandwagon or the caravan, if you will. We jump on the caravan with a bunch of teddy bears, or Ewoks as they're colloquially known amongst the galaxies far, far away. And this week's movie is the Ewok Adventure Caravan of Courage. And we might also spice in a little bit of the Battle of Endor in there as well. These movies were made in 1984 and 1985. But before we get into that a little bit more, we're going to do our gratitudes. And I'm going to go first this week because I am grateful for my mum this week. Shout out to Denise if you're listening, which I know that you are because you're a very awesome mum. I had a very personal crisis this week. I won't go into it, but who do you call when you're in deep, deep trouble? You call your mum. And she was able to really help me through some tough stuff. So thank you, Mum. I appreciate you. And thank you to all the mums out there. This being recorded on Mother's Day. So mums do a lot and we appreciate you. Brash, gratitudes.
Gratitudes. I also want to point out, my mum also helped me out with a issue this got past week as well. So shout out to Mama. I know she's probably not listening, even though she knows about the podcast.
That's all right. We'll send her the link and say, thank you, Mrs. Brasher.
But my gratitude for my friends like you, but specifically this gratitude, I'm going to highlight one of my friends, Mel. Known her for a very, very long time. She's also a mother, so also happy Mother's Day to Mel. But not that we really ever hang out with each other, but we'll see each other every now and then around town. But the one thing that we constantly do is every day send each other about 50,000 reels or TikToks. Me and Mel, we share a lot of reels between each other, and it, I know it really helps me get through my day. Always grateful for her at least thinking of me when she sees any reels or stuff and sends them to me.
Yeah, good little injection of dopamine in your day.
That's it. Yeah, it's just something nice and something that we do with each other. Like when we see a cool metal sort of reel or something like that, and brightens up my day every day. So
very good. Thank you to Mel, and thank you to Mum. We appreciate you. All right. Getting into our episode, guys, we're talking about the Ewok Adventure Caravan of Courage and the Battle of Endor. As we said, made in 84 and 85. These movies are old, Brash.
Old, very
older
old.
than us. We've only ever done one movie that has been similarly old like this, and it was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it was as old as us, made in 1990. These ones are even older. But these ones, especially Caravan of Courage that we're talking about today, is about Wicket, the Ewok, and his friends who agreed to help two shipwrecked human children, Mace and Sindel, on a quest to find their parents. And then the sequel to that, the Battle for Endor, is about the same Ewok village, but marauders raid and steal a power supply that they believe is magical. And Wicket once again comes to save the day, and Sindel is also there, and she escapes the evil witch, Sharel, and they befriend a hermit who may help them save the Ewok village in the end. Now, in this podcast, in this episode, you're obviously going to learn a little bit of the Ewok language, which we've already gone into, and that's probably the extent of it. But we're going to look at the lasting legacy that these movies have had on Star Wars canon, if any. We're going to look at our audience's reactions to these movies because they are divisive. And we're also going to learn a little bit about the technology and the visuals in this movie that really made it sort of stand out for a TV movie during the 80s. And lastly, we're going to go into our MVTs where we talk about not judging a book by its cover. And we're also going to be talking about the journey from childhood to adolescence and the loss of childhood innocence through these movies that we think that they depict. So stay strapped in, guys. We're going to be talking about all of that in the podcast today. Brash, this movie was directed by John Corti, but it surprised me to know that both of these movies were actually written by none other than the man himself, George Lucas.
Yeah, 100%. And Bob Carrot.
Yes, he had some help, but the main story points were indeed made by George Lucas himself. They come off to me a lot like bedtime stories, and I think that they definitely were something that he used to tell his children and that he put into a movie sort of format. I've also heard and read that this was almost like his testing ground for two things. One being that this was his first test to see if Star Wars stood beyond its original core characters of Luke, Leia, and Han. And it also didn't have any lightsabers or mentionings of the Force or anything like that in it. So he was going to see if the Star Wars draw could go beyond what he had previously established to see if he could build upon it. And the other thing was that it was almost like, I've read that it was almost like his test run for Willow. Now, I haven't seen Willow. Is that true, Brash? I don't know.
Good movie. Yes, well, see, and a lot of the, some of the stuff they use, like the fairy noise, they use that in Willow.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think a lot of, they use Warwick Davis in Willow.
Yes. They do. In fact, I think he indeed plays Willow.
Well, he does. But yeah, no, I think this probably would have been a good test film for Willow, but I think they had a bit more star power in Willow.
Yes. Yeah, Val Kilmer being one of those.
Yep.
I do know that one of the biggest critiques of this movie was that it did in fact lean pretty heavily or more so heavily into the fantasy genre than it did the sci-fi as what Star Wars fans were expecting. This movie takes place in ABY3, which in Star Wars language is after the Battle of Yavin, 3 years after the Battle of Yavin. And for those of you that need a little bit more explanation, the Battle of Yavin is when Luke blew up the Death Star. That's basically year 0 in the canonical talk of Star Wars.
Between Empire and Jedi Returns.
Yes, yeah. So this one happens in between Empire Strikes Back and the Return of the Jedi. So this is technically the first time we see Wicket and his people, but chronologically in the real world, we obviously saw him in Return of the Jedi first. But it's probably important to acknowledge, Brash, that these movies, canonically, technically, don't really exist anymore. Disney redid the canon for Star Wars in 2014. And so far, none of these characters, except for obviously the Ewoks and Wicket, who appear in Return of the Jedi, which is canon, and also a later cameo appearance in The Last Jedi, I believe. He returns with his son Pommet. And other than that, these Ewok movies, The Caravan of Courage and the Battle of Endor, not mentioned, not canon, but are part of the Legends collection. A lot of good stories in the Legends collection of Star Wars, Brash.
Yeah.
One thing to mention about this movie as well is that it was made on $2 million, about $2 million, which is no $200,000 like our favorite Australian movie, Gabriel. But this one was a limited cinema release. It released in some places in the cinema, but it was mostly a TV movie. And this was back in the days when they used to advertise a TV movie, and it used to be a big event and affair, and you could watch it on your little box with your family and have a really good time. So one thing that surprised me about this movie, Brash, it was actually nominated for an award, and it actually won an award. Outstanding visual effects for Primetime Emmy in 1985 for The Caravan of Courage. It actually won, and its sequel, Battle for Endor, won the same outstanding special effects in 1986.
I mean, to be fair though, that time period, yeah, I can see it, because like, even just watching it back again, like some of the effects that they use, I was like, damn. With the shit they had back then, how'd they do that?
Yeah, I agree. and I think that looking back at it at the humble year of 2025 at time of recording, I think some of it kind of holds up. Like you can look at it and be like, you know what? Some of the effects, like obviously some of the physical effects, really, really well done. But then they use some techniques which I'll go into a little bit later that have actually been adapted through other movies and perfected. but you can see the tiny little seed that sort of started it here in this little Ewok movie from George Lucas back in 1984. So yeah, it was really kind of revolutionary as well in that regard. But before we jump into all of that, let's get into our hot takes. Our hot takes is where we discuss our first thoughts of the media and unpack the boldest opinions from what surprised us to what split the room. We'll also highlight your hot takes from Threads, Instagram, and Reddit. So if you want to get involved in that, make sure you check out the show notes below and you might have your little comment read out on our podcast. And we thank all of our people that get involved for the podcast. We love reading your stuff out and having a little chat about it as well. I'll go first for this one, Brash, because my story about this is pretty boring. I didn't know these movies existed until you said, let's do Ewok Caravan of Courage for the podcast. I was like, what the heck is that? And then I looked at it, and then somebody also said when I mentioned it, there was like, oh yeah, that's like the Star Wars Christmas special, a TV movie. And I was like, oh no, because that is notoriously bad and very critically bombed, the Christmas special. But that being said, watching these movies, I have said to a few people now that they obviously have their flaws, they have aged, but what an enjoyable, nice little cozy movie. To the point where I watched the first one and we were only going to do the Caravan of Courage, but I thought to myself, I'm going to whack on the second one because that was just such a fun little cozy ride in the Forest of Endor. And I messaged you after I watched the first one. I was like, what a cozy movie, such a nice little jaunt with the Ewoks, and so good to be back in the Star Wars little place and, you know, magic with all these kinds of things. And then you said, oh, we'll strap in because the next one's even more cozy. And I was like, well, I'll get my hoodie out. And literally the next message I sent you was 10 minutes in, Cyndail's entire family gets massacred and blown up. And I was like, holy shit, this is not cozy. But from there, that obviously instigates her journey into her adventure for the movie in the Battle of Endor. But nice little trick you played on me, Brash. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Sorry, I kind of forgot how rough it was. And it was pretty rough because even like Caravan of Courage, it's not really rough. There's some sadness in it. It's not too bad. But then, yeah, I forgot how much the Battle of Endor was a little bit more rougher.
I'm not sure if actually, I'm going to look this up because I'm pretty sure the Battle of Endor. Do you remember, Brash, when we talked in our Indiana Jones episode about the Temple of Doom and what was happening with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg at the time when they made that movie?
Yep.
They were both going through horrible relationship crises and they took it out on their work. So in 1984, they made things like this. There was like a little bit kind of on the edge of your seat. And that was one of the biggest critical things that people said about this movie as well, was that it was advertised and obviously represented to children, being Ewok focused. But then the second movie, the Battle of Endor, was obviously full of themes like the death of this young girl's family. And then even more so throughout, there were some scary scenes through it as well. But there was apparently a message that went on before it aired in 1985 that said, this is a movie that you need to watch with your kids. Do not let them watch it alone. Like it came on before the actual, like a pre-warning, just like the old ones in Australia used to be. You know, you wouldn't steal a car, you wouldn't steal a handbag, don't pirate a movie. In this one, it was sit with your parents to watch this movie. So that's interesting to note as well, that even though it was targeted towards family and children and it was an adventure movie, there's obviously some darker themes through at least Battle of Endor and some throughout the Caravan of Courage as well. And when I watched these, I was like, maybe this is my kids' entry point into Star Wars. But I think that the janky look of the stop motion would also kind of freak my kids out too, because they're so used to pristine animation these days in 2025 that kind of wouldn't really sit right with them at that moment. But yeah, I had a decent time with these movies. What about you, Brash? What's your first hot takes of these movies, the Ewok movies?
So I love these movies. They are like these are like I'll watch it back. It is. I watched it back and like I had goosebumps watching it again because it has been a fair few years since I watched it. A very, very long time, because like it was hard to sort of get it.
Yeah,
like you could just walk into a store and you go, "Oh, I want the Ewok movie on DVD."
Well, I don't think they were VHS released. No, I don't know where. It's the same as the Christmas special. I've never seen it because I don't know where to find it. Because
it was released on DVD. But I'm not sure if it was released on video. And it wasn't released on DVD in Australia until like 2018. And so realistically, you couldn't watch it again unless it somehow appeared on TV again, or someone has a copy of it and put it onto like say YouTube or something like that, or you got it from LimeWire or something like that.
Yeah.
Or you pirated it somehow.
Which we don't condone here at the Fandoms podcast.
No, definitely movies.
Yeah, by me.
Um,
Or subscribe.
or subscribe, yeah. But no, so my first soiree into this was even before I watched any of the Star Wars.
So was this your Virgin Star Wars experience?
This was my intro into Star Wars.
Wow.
So I watched this one. I was roughly 4 or 5. I mean, maybe 4 or 5. So that being, it would have already been out 10 years, 10, 11 years. But yes, my granddad actually, because they must have been on, because the good thing about going around my grandparents' house was that they had Ozstar.
Yep. My nan had Ozstar too. It must be a nan thing. I don't know.
It was. I think it was back in the day. Like we just had normal TV and shit. Like we couldn't afford Oz TV. But my grandparents did. But I think it was more so my grandma could watch cricket.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she's a big cricket. She was a big cricket fan. But it was my granddad. I don't know. He must have just had like this sense. Because whereas my brother and that wasn't so much, like wasn't really into it. My sister definitely wasn't into it. He just knew that I was going to be a big fucking nerd.
Mm-hmm. It's like, this is the one.
Yeah. So it was on Ozstar, and he taped them, recorded them on a tape for me, both movies. And every time I go around to my grandparents' place, I'd watch Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor.
That's so good. That's so awesome. See, I remember the old days of recording a movie off the TV, and they'd still have the old school TV ads on the recording as well. And it was almost like a little time capsule there. But that's so crazy to think that this is your entry point into Star Wars. And after watching it, you thought to yourself, I want some more of this.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And I don't actually think I actually watched a Star Wars movie. God, I must have been like 8 or 9 before I even watched a Star Wars movie. So from like when I was about 4 to 6, when I was still down south with where my grandparents were, I watched Battle for Endor and Caravan of Courage all the time. And then there was a big gap where I didn't watch Star Wars. And then it must have been like 8 or 9. And then I caught up with that, I watched all of the Star Wars, and then I just completely fell in love with Star Wars after that.
My first journey into Star Wars, my grandma and my auntie, I believe, took me to the cinema because they just re-released A New Hope in cinemas. I think it was digitally remastered or something like that. And I may have been 6 or 7 when I saw it. And it literally encompassed my entire life after that for the longest time, because I would sit down at my nan's house afterwards and write down plays for Star Wars and just do all kinds of nerdy shit like that. So yes, I was very, very similarly indoctrined into the world of Star Wars as well.
Phantom Menace.
Oh, 99.
That must have been when, because that came out. I must have saw that.
1999.
What the fuck is this? And then realized it was attached to the Ewoks, and then went back and watched the old ones. Because I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure. I might have watched the original Star Wars before Phantom Menace, but I don't remember that. Also, I don't remember a lot of things when I was young. So it's also a bit of an issue.
We're doing our best here at the Fandom Horror.
My memory from back when I was little is very shoddy, but I do remember the important parts, like my granddad taping Caravan of Courage for me and sitting there watching that with him. But yes, I'm not sure if Phantom Menace came out and I was like, fuck yeah, Star Wars. I've watched this shit since Ewoks. And then, because
you're like, where the fuck are all the bears?
Where the fuck are the Ewoks? Where's the Ewok with a lightsaber? Because I don't think, because realistically, the only other person in my family that I could really say possibly would have watched Star Wars is maybe my older brother, because my older brother was born in 84.
Yep.
So,
I had action figures, I had toys, I had the bloody lot. I was a Star Wars kid through and through, and I'm a twin, so my twin brother at the same time. It was really awesome when we get action figures because I would get one and he would get one, but we just play with each other all the time. So it was almost like getting 2 action figures, but you had to,
Did you ever dress up as Star Wars characters?
I don't think so. I think we had Darth Vader masks.
Was one of you Luke and one of you Leia?
I always really liked Luke Skywalker as a kid, and my brother really liked Han Solo. But the first action figures we got, mine was a Luke Skywalker and his was a Yoda.
Oh.
And that's funny because that's kind of the relationship we had growing up as well. He was always the one that kind of was educating me, pulling me through things. But we've digressed.
We have digressed. But yes, No, but yeah, so I was introduced to Star Wars through Ewoks when I was 3, 4, 5, roughly around that time period when I was still down south. And then, from now on, I've got fucking tattoos and all kinds of stuff for Star Wars all over me.
It's set in from there. All right, let's go to our Reddit to see what our community has said. All right, we have Chen Geller, who said, this and its sequel are basically a dry run for Willows. It's almost beat for beat. It's essentially The Hobbit with Ewoks. George Lucas read at least a part of the books around August of 1975. So I can see that he's been inspired by a few things there in The Hobbit, especially there's a scene in the Caravan of Courage where the large quadrupedal beast chases Mace and Sindel into a hole in a tree and then starts to scratch its way sort of into them using the best stop motion that 1984 has to offer. And that reminded me a lot of Bjorn the Bear chasing dwarves through the forest and eventually them hiding in his own house and doing something very, very similar. So there are some beats that I can see that perhaps were very, very similar, even to the point thematically of like breaking into a place and having a really big adversary in there where the Gorax was. That can be synonymous with Smaug the Dragon, you might say. So I can agree with that, Chen Geller. I think that The Hobbit was probably a bit of an inspiration, and we've already talked about the fact that it was a dry run for Willow. There's some shot-for-shots there and some similar sound effects used. We have Dcaster that says, I absolutely loved this as a kid, and the sequel was okay, as in Battle for Endor was actually just okay. And then there is a Ghost Elder that says, I'm fairly certain that Wilford Brimley says fuck at some point in the Battle for Endor. And I watched it after reading that, and I can see the time when he actually when he's trying to get his ship working, and he's finally got the power cell in, and he actually says, "Oh, come on!" But if I didn't have the subtitles on, it actually would have sounded like he said "fuck." So, as a kid watching this on TV, and he seems like the character.
I was going to say, he probably does say it, and then there's subtitles.
Yeah, they've changed it a
little differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Fair Dance 7 informed us that it was on Disney Plus, which is indeed on Disney Plus. It got there in 2001 due to fan petition. So if you want to go and watch these movies, the people have said their piece.
Do you know what's up there, though?
The Christmas special.
Christmas special. That needs to be erased from history.
Yes. I just remember seeing Chewbacca wearing clothes in an image, and I was like, that needs to go.
Well, isn't he the only one who doesn't wear clothes?
I don't know.
His whole family's wearing clothes.
Yeah, I see Chewbacca in a red shirt or a red dress or something, or a Wookiee. Like, goodness me.
I'm pretty sure like all his family's wearing clothes, and he's not.
Oh, man. All right. Let's jump over to our threads and see what our threads community says. Remember, everybody, if you want to contribute to our threads, we are at Fandom Portals on threads. Come and say hello. M. Braun says, I know I haven't seen it. Oh, sorry. I know I have seen it, but I can't remember or tell you much about it. It was one with 2 crash-landed kids, and they had to fight off a giant monster with the help of Ewoks, right? And I said, that's spot on, buddy. There's a sequel as well.
That is it.
Yeah, that is indeed it. And then he goes, I said, there's a sequel, and he goes, there is? I didn't know that. And I said, now I want to see those as well. So there we go. We have Old Brash Rackham. That's you. Yes, you told us that this is your late grandfather who taped both the Ewok movies for you, and you rewatch them lots and lots of times, and it gives you goosebumps and a nostalgia hit. We have Christine from Outside of the Box podcast, who's guested on our show. Hello, Christine. How are you? Thank you for contributing to our threads. She has said that I watched every Ewok movie, and it was not bad to me. Not bad to me either, Christine. Thank you for commenting. And we have Tales from the Fandom. He says, I've watched it. It was one of my first experiences with Star Wars before I knew it was Star Wars. So similar to you, Brash.
Yeah.
Tales from the Fandom. And our last one, we've got Peruna 2001, who said, we had it recorded on VHS. My sister watched this non-stop until someone stole it with her VCR in a home break-in. I think we ended up with another copy plus the sequel. I think we'd remember both more fondly if we hadn't watched them so many times. Thinking back, I like the aspects of getting another view of the Star Wars universe with familiar characters like the Ewoks. I think we're starting to get similar toned shows such as The Mandalorian and Endor now. Ultimately, I think this is the kind of story that Star Wars fandom craves. And I kind of agree because...
I did too.
Yeah, I know that lots of people, when the Acolyte came out, for example, that was Jedi heavy, and everybody kind of... Well, there was a little pocket of the Star Wars fandom that kind of liked it, but there was very negative kind of reviews on the Acolyte. But stepping away from the Skywalker saga and the Skywalker name especially is something that people in the Star Wars fandom really are looking towards.
Because there's been a lot of Star Wars shows out lately that sort of don't really revolve around Jedi.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't mind the Acolyte. I just think they should even go a step further and just do Old Republic.
I think they dipped a toe in and everybody was expecting more, and expectations versus reality never is a good combination when it comes to adapting IP media. But thank you, Peruna, for your comprehensive comment there. We really appreciate it. And I'm really sorry to hear about your VCR going missing.
Yeah, that's sad.
That's a bummer. But hopefully you can watch the Ewok movies with a little bit more fondness now on Disney Plus. Okay, that is our community's voice. Now, one thing that also blew me away with this before we move on, Brash, is we've talked a little bit about the visual effects. Now, as we said, some of them are a little bit janky by today's standards, but they actually pulled off quite a few shots that were stepping stones for movies now. One thing, for example, was forced perspective tricks. So obviously the Gorax is really big and Ewoks are really small. And the way that they pulled that off was using forced perspective tricks. And do you know another movie that used that most recently? One of my favorites of all time? You know it. Of course you do. Hobbits and Wizards. Come on, bro.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's why they hold up today as such a, like when you're watching The Lord of the Rings, it kind of holds up seeing the small hobbits next to the large sort of creatures because they used forced perspective instead of CGI. That seed was planted here in the Ewok Adventure movies using ILM. Industrial Light and Magic, which is a company that we've talked about a lot on this podcast, but I actually think that is George Lucas's visual effects company. Is that true?
Yeah, parent organization, Lucasfilm. Founder, George Lucas.
There you go. So we've talked about it so much, and I didn't even realize that it was George Lucas's company because they're the ones that were responsible for the CGI on Draco. And in this movie especially, they had to be very resourceful and very thrifty because, as we said, there was a budget of $2 million. They didn't have the Star Wars feature films extensive resources to draw from, so they had to use innovative miniature work. They used matte paintings as well as backgrounds. Some of them you can pick out in the landscape shots as well. I don't know if you did, Brash, but I definitely did the landscape paintings.
Sorry, you've just made me deep dive.
Well, yeah, that's what we do here on the Fandom podcast.
About ILM, Tron Ares, the Fantastic Four, Superman, Jurassic World Rebirth, F1, Leo and Stitch. They're part of all these things.
Yeah, they're like
the Thunderbolts.
Yeah, ILM it's Hollywood's leading visual effects company.
Severance, Sonic 3, Electric State, Gladiator 2,
all of it.
Wicked, Venom.
That's why George Lucas is so rich, and he could be like, "Yeah, you can have Star Wars."
Yeah,
because he knew he'd still have a hand in it because everybody's using ILM.
Lord of the Rings. Acolyte, Percy Jackson, Echo.
So ILM, even on that reduced budget, they kind of were able to give these TV movies a cinematic polish, and they don't really stand that far apart from Star Wars and the Star Wars universe that people balked at it, not except for the fantasy vibe of it all, but in terms of visual effects, I think they hold up just as much as the Star Wars movies, A New Hope, Empire, and Return. So that was really good to see, and probably very exciting for people in the 80s when they were watching them on their TV as well, having these movies winning an outstanding visual effects Emmy as well. So that was just another thing for my hot take.
Think of the Rancor.
Yeah, exactly. And the Gorak, like the Rancor and the Gorax. The Rancor, I think, was a practical effect, whereas the Gorax was a cinematography.
No, I mean like between like the Rancor and the Boarhounds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I know what you mean.
Similar in a way.
Yeah, and I think that they did a really sort of decent job, especially using the practical creature effects as well. It's pretty hard to pull off stop motion animation at the best of times, but then coupling that with real life actors is just really difficult and different to do. So kudos to ILM. You are a masterful organization. Pioneer in the industry. Right, that was our hot takes. Let's get into our fandom fact face-off. In the fandom fact face-off, hosts go head-to-head with trivia about the focused media, learning new facts along the way. When the host collectively gains 25 points together from correct answers, we will give away another movie voucher to someone on our mailing list. Might come as a surprise to you. I didn't flag this with you, Brash, but I enjoyed working as a team so much that we're going to do it from here on out. We're going to work as a team. We're going to get 25 points. And when we get 25 points, we're going to send one of our mailing list people off to the movies. So if you wanted to join our mailing list, go to www.fandomportalspodcast.com. and join our mailing list, and we can send you to the movies after we get 25 points. Our last winner from our last giveaway from last month was Reese. So congratulations, Reese. We've already sent you your movie voucher, and hopefully you're enjoying some popcorn right now, if you're not listening to the Fandom Portals podcast.
Okay. Easy one for the first one.
Okay.
Where was this movie shot? It was shot in one location and one location only.
This movie was shot in the same place that Return of the Jedi was shot. It was somebody's ranch or range.
It's a pretty famous place.
Marin County, home of the Skywalker Ranch.
Yes. Go home to the Skywalker Ranch.
Yeah, and much of the action shots was shot in public parkland in Roy's Redwoods as well. Yeah,
so it's a 300-year-old sequoia.
That is a really old tree, older than these movies.
Definitely.
But yeah, those redwood trees are a really brilliant background for the forest moon of Endor. Speaking of Brash, forest moon of Endor,
with a bunch of places that are forests.
A lot of lot of biomes on this forest moon, including a desert and a rocky outcropping, a large river, and many castles.
One in meadows and fields.
Yeah, one in each movie apparently. But yeah, this one was shot in Marin County, Skywalker Ranch. All right, you ready for my question? That's a point for me.
Sure am.
So far, out of our 25 points, we've got 1 because we're resetting of the month. So 24 more, and we get to send a lucky mailing list person and listener to the movies, courtesy of us. All right. Aubrey Miller was cast in this movie. She plays Sindel Tawani, the young girl in the movie. She was remarkably young when she was cast. Do you know how old she was, Brash?
Yeah, I did look up a lot about her because this was her first role, and they actually picked her up from the town itself as a local talent. I think she's about the same age as I was when I watched it, like 5 or 6.
Correct. She was 5 years old. She was born in 1979, Aubrey Miller was, and this was shot in 1984. So that makes her 5 years old. And they were looking for a child who could be visibly young, but also be emotionally grounded and carry some emotional scenes, especially for the second movie, The Battle of Endor, where she takes a more title role. Whereas in the first one, she was kind of sick for the first part of it, and there are a lot of techniques that they used to reduce her filming and screening time as well. Jim Wheat, who directed the movie, remarked that Aubrey had a remarkable intuitive sense of the screen presence, which is good for somebody who's 5 years old, and it makes her a rare example of someone who was very young in a lead character role in a live-action Star Wars story who actually did a good job. The performance next to Walter Brimley also earned her lots of praise from different kind of family audiences as well. So I think her performance definitely improved from the first movie to the second movie. Not to critically judge the performance of a 5-year-old, but I have been a teacher for a very long time, and I've seen them trying to go home sick on days when they don't really look that sick. And I can just say that Aubrey Miller is Oscar-worthy winning for, I would have sent her to the office with a slip because she was sick. She needed her medicine. Had to take her. Got to go. Well done, Aubrey. All right. So that is a point to you, or that is a point to our pool. That is 2 points total. Your turn, Brash.
In Return of the Jedi, there's a whole bunch of Ewoks. 2 stood out so much that they were given actual names in the Battle of Endor. Do you know the names of the 2 Ewoks?
2 Ewoks. Is Wicket one of them?
No, that's none of the main cast.
Oh, okay.
But I'll give you a hint.
All right.
One sounds very close to a automated sucking device. So Romba is one of them.
Yeah, Romba.
And the other one, name closely resembles Chief Elder.
Chaka-Trock? Chaka-Trock was the woodsman in this movie.
The Elder, Logray.
Oh, Logray, yeah. Nah, don't know. Can't do it. What is it?
So it was Romba and Chubray.
Ah, Chubray. Actually, was one of those the ones that actually stole the speeder?
I see. In the Return of the Jedi, they were unnamed. It could have been, but I'm pretty sure Wicket still doesn't Wicket steal the speeder? I thought it was Wicket that stole the speeder.
No, Paplu was the one that steals the speeder.
Oh, Paplu.
Yeah, he was also later named.
Oh, Paplu. If only as those people who play Star Wars Galaxy Heroes and they're in the Ewok team, they can be such a pain in the ass.
Oh, Paplu's.
Yes, Paplu's in their team as well. Paplu, Wicket, Logray.
No, Paplu has more accoutrement, you might say, on his headdress. He's got some feathers and a couple of like acorns by the look of it, whereas Wicket just has a plain leather looking brown. But yeah, lots of famous Ewoks out there, guys. You should go and look them up. And Brash, we might talk a little bit later about it, but Ewok Hunt, have you played that on Battlefront 2?
Oh, that was such a scary fucking mode.
I know, man. And it was such a, like, it was a cult hit too. I loved it. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That's in store. But yeah, it's funny how these Ewoks just overtook in various different parts. Anyway, all right, let's do the second question for me. I didn't get that one. That is one that I needed to look up. So Eric Walker, he played Mace, and George Lucas did something intentionally to his character in order to help young audiences identify with his story. What was that?
I was going to say that he picked the actor because he looked like Luke or looked like Mark Hamill.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So because even when I watched it, I was like, "Damn, is that Luke?" I'm like, "Wait, no, it's young."
Yeah. So he picked him because he drew comparisons to Luke Skywalker from A New Hope, not only in personality because he started out as frustrated and naive, and he had to work towards courage and self-reliance, which was Mace's journey throughout. He had to work towards his independence, working with the Ewoks as central guides. They made him a teenager because otherwise he wouldn't really need the Ewoks as a guide. So that was the draw card there. And being a younger audience, they still sort of had that relation to him. Is as a story element, he kind of plays the part of being the adolescent character that is moving towards independence and moving away from the family unit in terms of a leadership space. But he even looked like Luke Skywalker with the haircut and even with the clothes. Like if you remember at the end of A New Hope, Luke was wearing an orange jumpsuit with a sort of flight vest on, and that is literally his costume in this movie. And one thing I want to say about Eric Walker as his role as Mace, bro, 0 to 100.
Oh yeah, he was all gas, no brakes.
Yeah. Especially when we're first introduced to this character in Caravan of Courage, he runs into the place where the Ewoks are just meeting Tyndall, and he is immediately just like gun in hand, yelling at these creatures. And I understand, he is being very protective of his sister and he's very young, but man, he is good expression, all gas, no brakes. I love it. But yes, you are correct. Luke Skywalker was his inspiration, very intentional by George Lucas. All right, that's 3 points so far, 21 to go.
One thing, which is another reason why the Ewoks was retconned, the Ewok movies was retconned, is because there'd be a major plot hole because of something Sindel does in the movies that would contradict the Ewoks in The Return of the Jedi. Do you know what that is?
Yes. Sindel teaches the Ewoks to speak common language, and they speak English. That was a critical failure in terms of the audience's response to them as well. They didn't like that the Ewoks spoke a common language. I've always sort of thought of it as, yes, they're speaking English to our ears, but perhaps if somebody like an Imperial stormtrooper was down there, they would listen to them and hear a different language. So for the purposes of story, perhaps we hear them listening to and speaking in English. But I kind of liked in the first one, in Caravan of Courage, how there was that language barrier, because it kind of drew me in more to be intuitive based on the behaviors of the characters, to interpret what was going on, what they were doing, who was in a relationship with who, or who was talking to who, and what they were talking about. And I think that forms a deeper sense of storytelling, which is also why I really didn't like the narrator in the Caravan of Courage. I thought even though it was a nice little touch and it gave it a storybook element, kind of wasn't necessary, because it reminds me of the start of WALL-E, the movie. First 25 to 30 minutes of that movie, zero dialogue. And we know what's going on the whole time. And I think they could have done that with these movies and just drawn that connection. So I'm in the party of, I didn't like it either. I didn't like that they could speak a common language. So
yeah. And also the only part of that I liked was when he was introducing characters. I think that's the only part of the narrative that I liked, because them saying, say, Wicked or anything like that, I wouldn't know that that's a name of a character specifically. So I like how it named it, because then they used to go, oh, okay, that's Wicked, that's, I don't think Cheap Surfer's in it, that's Long Grey, like it sort of
and
gives
the
them that
brothers
thing, like that's Trop, that's
Weedle and Weechie, the brothers, and Deej, the leader. Yeah,
the only one's name I knew was Wicket.
Yeah, I actually, the funny thing about it was, in The Return of the Jedi, the word Ewok is never mentioned. The only way that we know that they're Ewoks is a good segue into my next question right here. So here it comes.
Yeah.
So the Ewoks were designed specifically, and this goes across all three sort of appearances of the Ewoks in terms of Return of the Jedi, Caravan of Courage, and also the Battle of Endor. They were specifically crafted because George Lucas was originally intending to use a different species very famous in Star Wars, but had to change direction due to production costs and the story structure he was going for. Do you know what the original species was going to be in Return of the Jedi?
Oh, the Wookiees.
Yeah, they were originally going to be Wookiees, but they changed it to Ewoks for the production costs.
Yeah, because Wookiees are big.
Yeah, they're big, but it is also rumored that George Lucas did this intentionally to specifically craft them towards children and specifically design them for marketing. So the only way that people knew that they were called Ewoks is because through all the merchandising and through all the marketing drives and the sales to young children and through the ads and through the toys and through the plushies and the action figures and the animated spin-offs, they were called Ewoks, and that's when the names came out as well. There was one person in the Star Wars cast who actually completely hated the inclusion of the Ewoks and has gone on the record to say that he said that the end of this climactic saga and the Rebels' fate should never have been dependent on teddy bears, and the climactic end should never have ended in a teddy bear's picnic. Do you know who would have said that in the original cast? Who does it sound like?
Is it Harrison Ford?
Yeah, mate, it is Harrison Ford, of course. He literally sat there. He's
a bastard.
I know. He's expressed his disdain for it on numerous talk shows, and he definitely thinks it was a marketing scam as well. And I don't think George Lucas has ever really denied the fact, but it kind of worked because the popularity of the Ewoks led Lucasfilm to greenlight Caravan of Courage for one, greenlight the Battle of Endor, and they had a TV cartoon called Ewoks as well, cementing really their legacy. Oh, is it?
Yeah, and it introduces so many of the other characters as well.
That might be my son's entry point into Star Wars.
Yeah, it's really...
I'm looking for it. So yeah, you got that one correct.
I don't, but I can give you a bonus question.
Go for it.
So, in the Battle of Endor, when they're prepping for the final battle against the Marauders, those shots were actually taken from another place or another show or movie. Do you know what movie they were taken from?
Yeah. I read this one. They were actually ripped straight from The Return of the Jedi. Whether they were used or they were made for The Return of the Jedi and never made the uncut, I know that they were used for that. And it's funny. It's actually, that's a really good point to bring up because I really wanted to talk about the fact that George Lucas has gone on record to say that Star Wars The Return of the Jedi is an allegory for America versus Vietnam in the Vietnam War, with the Ewoks using their guerrilla tactics. Yeah, guerrilla tactics. Their traps and their use of the natural environment, which is exactly what Ewoks did, is very reminiscent of the Viet Cong. And he kind of got a little bit of backlash about that. So George Lucas, after Return of the Jedi and getting this backlash, thought to himself, I'm not going to do it once. I'm going to do this twice. They're going to do the same thing against the Marauders. Yeah.
Because I thought it was really interesting because like it's good. I reckon it's a good use of what couldn't be used in the actual movies. So instead of them wasting all that footage that they've done, they're able to reuse it in a cool way on another project. Just like in Caravan of Courage, the ship that they crashed on was actually reused wings of snowspeeders from Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, and that's also a way that they could have cut down costs because the budget was only $2 million for one. But I also like that George Lucas has said before that he uses sci-fi as a really good, and Star Wars specifically, as a really good vehicle to tell stories about humanity and about the human condition and about things that are going on politically and around the world that you can't really do in a real life way because you ruffle too many feathers. So I kind of like that he kind of spun it on its head where the Imperial forces and even the Marauders in this one were more technologically advanced. They were larger. They had more firepower or beast of burden power. But through ingenuity and through the use of technique over technology, they were able to defeat their superiors, which also kind of drives the narrative of the underdog succeeding over what's the opposite to an underdog? Overdog. The one that was like the one that's expected to win. Yeah, the favorite. One of the scenes where I saw it most prominently, especially in the Battle of Endor, was when the Marauders were trying to go from their plains or desert environment to walk through the forest where the Ewoks were running into, and all of their stuff kept getting trapped, like all of their technology, all of their big monsters and things like that. So they had to get down on foot and they had to chase. So they drew them into their own environment. They drew them to the ship where they knew that if they could power it up, they had guns to use. Very, very clever, very smart. All of this in a movie that was directed towards children in the Battle of Endor. So
yeah, they use it in the Caravan of Courage too. It's a literal David versus Goliath.
Yeah.
Because the Gorak being like 30 feet tall. No, how tall it was? It was like
Gorax, yeah, it's about 30 feet tall.
30 feet tall.
Yeah, and they lure him into a space that's advantageous before they then defeat him eventually, not without loss. R.I.P. Chook Trok. Good man. All right, let's go on to our Set Secrets segment. This is where hosts look behind the scenes to focus on the movie and give you all the information about what went right, what went wrong, and what was interesting about the way the movie was made. This week, Brash, I wanted to get into some of our characters and look at where they are now. And by that, I mean, what happened to Sindel Tawani after she left Endor with Noah? That's what I wanted to look at. And then also what sort of happened to the Ewoks after the Battle of Endor as well. So obviously this is not canonical anymore in terms of Star Wars, but it is still cool. So do you have any idea what happened to Sindel?
She joined the Resistance.
No.
She became a political power.
Close.
And she became princess.
No. Very close. Well, you're very close because Sindel actually ended up becoming a journalist on Coruscant.
Oh.
Yes. So after she left Endor, she ended up traveling around the galaxy with Noah for quite some time. And then she ended up going to school in Coruscant because Noah decided to settle down somewhere in the mid-rim and retire as he should. Years later, after the Battle of Endor, she eventually started to get into some educational programs to do with journalism. And in around 17 ABY, which is about 15 years after the events of Caravan of Courage, she was a reporter for the news grid service known as the Life Monitor. During something called the Black Fleet Crisis, she received leaked tapes from the New Republic Admiral Hiram Drayson, which she used to break the story of Platt Malar, who was the sole survivor of the Yavithian attack. Now, all of those sounds like lots of Star Wars words, but basically, she is a political reporter who leaks human interest stories to the people. So although the Life Monitor had a limited readership, the article really picked up some speed, and some larger news agencies gave Tawani some credit for that original story, and she was able to then go on to bigger and better things and eventually started investigating the Lost Prophet, who was a holy man whose pronouncements were attracting pilgrims to the desert and in the brick sector. And she got enough evidence on this Lost Prophet to find out that that person was a clone trooper who had suffered lots of head injuries in a starfighter incident. And eventually, she, in 41 ABY, she released a memoir or a doctorate or a journalist report called Portraits of the Galactic Civil War, where she actually interviewed survivors of the Battle of Endor and put together the most comprehensive journal view of the Battle of Endor during that time. So imagine being her at that time thinking to yourself, wow, just 1 year later, I would have been stuck on that planet and a galactic war would have occurred, getting out at the right time.
It would have been so cool to tie them in with the action movies.
I think so too. I think it would have been, well, to do that, they actually would have had to come out beforehand. But I think what they did in this Legends arc was where she sort of was still involved vicariously and was obviously still impassioned through whatever happened at Endor, because she interviewed somebody called Hume Tal, who was a sergeant during the Battle of Endor, who was a stormtrooper that survived. And that stormtrooper, Hume Tal, actually took the position of the fact that the Ewoks were extremely brutal and the rebellions, or the rebels, were really brutal towards their treatment of the stormtroopers, down to the point where it actually talked about some of them were really badly killed in spike traps and left to die in various different inhumane circumstances. And some of them went on to say that some of the stormtroopers were actually cooked and eaten by the Ewoks as well, which is, yeah, apparently that's actually canon, because if you see the end of the Return of the Jedi, the Ewoks are playing on the helmets of the stormtroopers, but then, you know, there's lots of different things sort of going on that might suggest that they're not so nice to humans, because they were going to eat.
Well, that's not all. They were going to eat exactly until 3PO stopped them. I'm pretty sure they were on the menu.
Exactly.
Which also begs the question of, like, they helped the kid. It's really could have just been a meal ticket for him. Live after. Didn't have to go fight some big monster.
That's the thing for me as well. Like, that would have been easy roll credits, but maybe we were too harsh to judge old Mace Tawani when he rolled in with his guns ablazing beforehand, because we don't know what he would have seen prior to. But yeah, apparently Ewoks have a tendency and a taste for human flesh. Cuddly bears, they are not. Our most famous Ewok, Wicket. Thoughts on him, Brash?
I love Wicket.
He's good, isn't he?
Because I really liked him in the Caravan of Courage, and I think in Return of the Jedi, seeing Wicket again, I think for me, because I watched the Ewok movie before I watched the actual Star Wars movies, seeing Wicket in Return of the Jedi was just like a huge high for me. Well, basically seeing the Ewoks again in Return of the Jedi was a huge high for me. So yeah, I know all through primary school, me and my mates, we'd all just make Ewok noises, so just randomly. We'd just be walking along and someone would be like, "Oh, chum chum."
Yeah, that's how it goes. Hey, you pick up on something like that. Looking at Wicket's Wikipedia page, if you click, because Wikipedia has a canons side and they have a legend side. Yeah. And you can click on to filter what the information is like. And if you click on the legend side, his Wikipedia page is literally like as long as your arm. It's huge.
Because books, comics, all kinds.
Yeah, exactly. He had a whole thing through Morag and through the Tulag Witch, and he's done lots of different kind of adventures like that. But then if you click on the canon side, he's literally been reduced to a third of what his adventures were. So I think that it was awesome for Wicket, at least in the 80s, when he actually gained so much popular appeal through the children and through the marketing of Return of the Jedi that he was able to then, Warwick Davis return and reprise the role as Wicket in the Caravan of Courage and Battle of Endor, which is really cool. Do you know his full name? I didn't know he had 3 names. He has a full name.
Oh, Wicket does?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because I know they have the last name.
Mm-hmm.
It's Wicket. Oh my God, they named him after.
They did.
He's Warwick Davis.
They did. His last
Wicket
name
is
Warwick. Yeah, Wicket Wisteria Warwick. They named him after Warwick Davis, which is awesome. Imagine being named after a Star Wars character, let alone one as cool as.
Wait, does that mean it's Deej Warwick as well?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and Whittle J. Warwick as well.
Whittle Warwick.
There was actually comic books associated with the Ewok cartoon, and the actual cartoon itself as well went for 3 seasons, I believe. So very, very well loved part of the franchise, the old Ewoks there. The only other canonical, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about a little bit later, was the only canonical inclusion of the Ewoks since the Return of the Jedi and The Last Jedi, where you see a little flash of Wicket and his son watching the Imperial Star Cruiser be destroyed. The only other time is in Battlefront 2 in the modded game. Ewok Hunt, yes. And I think that was such a cool little inclusion into the game, because in that game you can either be a stormtrooper who is looking to survive, or you could be a little Ewok who is on the hunt trying to kill all of these stormtroopers. And it plays into that lethalness of those tiny little teddy bear creatures so much. And it's like, if you're a stormtrooper, you can only see through the lens of a circular spotlight, which is absolutely terrifying, because these Ewok warriors just blend so well into the greenery of the Endor moon. And I can tell
you, spears one shot. Oh,
yeah. And I can tell you very much that I have screamed a lot in games, but not as much as I have in
just the Ewok looking at a blunt picture of Wicket's face. I'm like, God, look at your little murderers.
I know.
They're so imagine running into that at nighttime in the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I would think a drop bear.
Yes, from Australia.
I think Australia that people talk about. That's what I see when I see these. I see little murderous drop bears.
Yes. I love that too, because they're kind of a mix between a wombat and a koala.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get to our most valuable takeaways. Our most valuable takeaway is the heart and soul of the podcast, where we break down the one thing that hit the hardest, stuck longest, or taught us something new from what we just watched. It is our moment to spotlight the takeaway that made us think, feel, or see things differently. This is what we learned from Ewok Adventure, Caravan of Courage. Brash, I liked your most valuable takeaway for this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Yes. And, looking at that, when you first said it to me, I thought you meant in terms of these movies as a whole, because looking at the covers, looking at how old they are, somebody might look at me like, I'm a pass on that. But it's actually like a nice little comfort watch. Technically, in terms of, movie going standards, it might not be the best movie that you ever watch, but, story-wise, it's very comforting. It's like it's an Woody and a rainy day kind of movie. But you actually meant something different. You meant it in the terms of Mace, the character of Mace.
Yes, because Mace in this movie does a lot of judging. Does a fair amount of judging, and instead of accepting the help and sort of going with the flow, he is pretty negative pretty much the whole way through the movie. Up until he realizes that the little Rocky, because all the Ewoks and both Sindel and Mace all got items to start off with. Wicket with his magic stick. Weedle and the other brother got the feather headbands. The father got, what did the father get?
He got a headband. He got the white headband of leadership. There was the
that's right, the leadership. Yeah,
the little tooth,
the white one of the
courage,
tooth.
I think.
Yeah, courage. The red one was courage.
There was 3 headbands.
Yeah, blue, a white, and a red. The white one was leadership. The red one was courage, and the blue one was
for being the youngest.
Yeah, he didn't actually do anything. And then you got the tooth and the crystal, and then the rock.
Yes,
and the rock was
and the candle.
And the candle, which was given to Sindel. And the rock was given to Mace, saying this is a special magical rock. It's part of the group, and he was like, "It is just a rock." But even when I saw that rock when I was a young kid, went, there's something special about that rock, because that rock looked so smooth.
Yeah,
I would just want to keep that rock purely just because how smooth it was.
Mm-hmm.
What a little rock collector, I guess. But he throws away the rock. Luckily, Wicket picks it up as he sees him throws it away. And yeah, exactly, MVP right there. Because it is used later on to find the secret entrance to the castle. So that is one extremely good example of don't judge a book by its cover. Because it's a rock doesn't mean it's not magic.
Quote.
But yeah, and then again, at the very start, when the Ewoks find Sindel and they're like, "Oh, we need to help her," and they realize it's a little girl and they don't want to stab her, which realistically they're like, "Oh, this is an easy meal ticket." They decide they're going to try and help her, and then he comes in guns a-blazing. The Ewoks tackle him and restrain him, hog tie him up, and take him back, and they start looking after him. And
he's still very distrustful though. After
yeah,
that,
very, very distrustful,
and he's very demanding, especially when they need to.
When he starts yelling and screaming at
Sindel
about
when she's sick,
food
and medicine.
Food, when he's like, say, food, eat, food, and he just keeps yelling the same words at them constantly, and to the point where I'm like, dude, man, you guys gotta do something different. They're not getting it. But eventually, they give him all the food and give him all the medicine that they had to help Sindel. They even go out of their way to go and then help get some more medicine, or for Mace to then say to Sindel when she's feeling better, "Hey, let's just leave."
Yeah.
And go off and then get themselves into trouble, and then the Ewoks come and save them again. So, yes, I reckon this movie heavily relies on the don't judge a book by its cover, because the Ewoks are actually quite friendly once you get to know.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of things that point towards that as well with the rock for me, and it sort of digresses into my most valuable takeaway as well with this one. The most impactful scene to me in this movie was when they were running away from the Ewoks, and Mace and Sindel sort of sat down for that moment because, Sindel was tired, and then Mace decided to light a campfire. And it's in that moment where he starts to renounce his childhood ways, and he vows to be that little bit more protective. And he says, "I just wish I was the best kid ever, and I never made any mistakes at all. And I just wish that we could go back to the time when everything was all good." And that's a very sort of childlike mentality. And you can see that that's what he was acting like previous to that moment. He was very rash, he was very stubborn, he was really reflective of that preteen angst that we see in the early adolescence. He's resistant to change, he's very afraid of everything that's unfamiliar, and he tries to assume that protectorate role. He says, "I'm mum and dad now, I'm going to look after you." It's like he knows that's what he's supposed to do, but he hasn't made the emotional journey yet at all, because he's still very cynical and very skeptical, especially when it comes to that rock. And I think that rock was kind of like a metaphor for him. Like, looking at him, it's just like a rock. It's a normal rock. He's just like a normal kid, but he has what he needs on the inside to complete this mission, which is exactly what was inside the rock. He knew what he needed to do to find his parents on the inside. He just needed to access it, which is the same as what he had to do with the rock. And do you remember what he had to do with that rock in order to access that part of him that was able to complete the mission?
Break it.
No, before that. Before he had to break the rock.
Oh, no.
He had to listen to it.
Oh,
he shook it and he listened to it. And that's the thing. When you're a teenager, what does your parents try to tell you to do to teach you things and to learn advice and to develop into an adult? They tell you to listen. Exactly. So I think that rock is like a metaphor for the teenage journey that he's going on. And, one of the really funny scenes to me was when they found Kanik, the shaman woman, and she had the staff, and she sort of gave it to Mace. And when she gave it to Mace, it changed into a lizard. And he was like, because he was demanding. He said, "You need to come and help us. We can't do this without you." And then he did the test and he kind of failed. But then Sindel did it and she said, "Can you please come and help us?" And there's that story about the innocence of the child. And in this movie, she is definitely very hopeful. She's very emotionally vulnerable. She's very reliant on her older brothers, and her protection comes from Noah and then later the Ewoks as well. She is this symbol of warmth throughout the movie as well, and also the symbol of early childhood innocence. Now, throughout the movie, these two movies, The Caravan of Courage and also The Battle of Endor, they're really her stories. They're Sindel's stories about how she grows from the innocence of a child to the independent survivor. And you do that through being thrust into circumstances that require you to survive. But she loses her entire family within minutes of the Caravan of Courage. So she has to learn to trust herself. And I think that Mace's role previously was very important to that, because he was her first view of a, quote, leader or someone who's going to take charge. So she was able to sort of model her growth off of that in many sort of aspects as well. However, she's still a child and she's still learning as best that she can. But I think my MVT for this one is that, through those events, she ends up becoming a little bit more self-aware, a little bit more emotionally resistant, and she's kind of more ready to face uncertain events of the world alone, because by the end of both of the movies, she's lost everything, but she's gained a lot more, and she's nervous, but also happy to go out and explore space with Noah and start her new adventure and become a world-renowned journalist, apparently. But I think that that's important to sort of think about in terms of that journey that she goes on. And it's the journey that a lot of kids go through when they hit their teenage years. They sort of look at the destruction is a bit of a harsh word, but the breakdown of their idea of a family, because they become something else in that sort of aspect. And that's what Mace was becoming. And it's sort of like the traditional coming of age stories. And you can think about any kind of child-centered movie, something always happens to the kids' parents and they're forced to grow on their own and into independence. And there's so many children's movies about it. I can think of The Land Before Time, Lion King.
A New Hope.
Literally A New Hope. Yeah. A New Hope, Star Wars. It happens to Luke as well. All these coming-of-age stories that require the protagonist to move beyond their circumstances because of something adverse that happens. And I think that's the message that comes through these movies the most, is that they really highlight the fact that this child is going on a journey, and that's one that can be emulated by the children watching as well. You go through hard things, but you can get through it.
Especially speaking of Star Wars in this sort of trope as well, it also shows, if you look at it, a lot of the young, because Luke was 15, I believe, when his uncle and aunt were killed, and he had to go off with, luckily he had everyone there with him, and had to go off and sort of grow up right then, so that no more speeding around, taking out womp rats and messing around with your friends on the weekends. It was, now you're a part of a rebel force. Whereas if you look at Anakin, who was an adult when he found his mum and lost his mum, and he had slaughtered an entire village of women, men, and children. It sort of shows that, and especially Star Wars and a lot of other movies, the children having to cope with that and grow up real quickly, always generally grow up doing the right thing, because they're, I suppose, trying to, even though their parents or their guys that are not there, they're trying to make them proud of the people who they can become through that growth. Whereas if you're already an adult like Anakin, it can sort of go the opposite sort of way.
You, yeah. Well, that's kind of drawing it back to how I would use this in terms of parenting my kids. There's always that, you always want to make sure that your kids are okay, but you want to give them enough freedom to explore things on their own. And that's the balance of a parent, isn't it? You kind of look at different sort of situations, and you don't want to overstep when they're exploring something new, because they won't develop any skills to get through it on your own. So you slowly have to withdraw your level of support in things so they can build up their mastery. And doing that in a slow and controlled way, in a safe way, is how lots of children mature and kind of grow. And that's kind of the development that we're seeing in terms of this movie, for one, I know that there is an abrupt sort of loss of family unit there, but Sindel also has lots of different support networks that she goes through and works with. Yeah, that help her take those risks safely, so she doesn't have to go and leave Endor in a big spaceship on her own.
Yeah.
She has that support and that supervisor or that caring sort of individual to help her take these steps and move through that coming of age journey with some assistance and support.
I think having that sort of still having that childlike wonder within you going through that trauma will also be a massive help. Because if you look at Anakin, when he loses Qui-Gon,
yep,
he doesn't flip out straight away then because he still has Obi-Wan as a support network. And I guess he still has that sort of, even though he's lost someone important, he's about to embark on a new crazy adventure of becoming a Jedi, which he sort of, in a way, sort of fantasized and endeavored to be like Qui-Gon as a sort of, because he was sort of like the father figure to Anakin that he never had. It sort of helped him shape a better path than he had. So when he was already an adult, when he's probably like, even though he still had Obi-Wan, but because he's an adult, instead of like us, all of us adults, instead of us going and seeking help from others, we just either boil over or bottle that shit up, which is sort of what he did.
I think that's what he was doing the whole time. You know, I think Qui-Gon's death would have definitely affected him, but he would have bottled it and bottled it and bottled it, and to the point where he was facing so much adversity and he wasn't really taught or told how to deal with that kind of thing, because the Jedi doctrine doesn't really give you avenues to deal with emotional conflicting thoughts in a positive kind of way. I think that the Jedi doctrine on like a whole probably does, but I think it's just the way it's presented sometimes is, you know, hate leads to anger, anger leads to fear, fear leads to destruction and loss. That's just, and not dealing with those in the proper way that we know, we like us as people know now, is great to talk about those kinds of things. And having those support networks there in terms of, especially for Caravan of Courage and the Battle of Endor, in every movie, these kids are in trouble. But that's what the Ewoks are. That's their support that's there. They're not the ones going through the trouble and the trauma, except for when the Marauders come and destroy their village. But the kids are the vehicle for them helping, the Ewoks helping them through that moment. All right, let's rate it on Fandom Portals on board. All right, it is time to rate it and rank it. Each host gives the movie a score out of 5, and we take the average and add it to our official Letterboxd on a board. If you want to follow along with that, you can find it on Letterboxd. We are always everywhere at Fandom Portals. Brash, we're talking about a new rating system that we're going to use because our Fandom Portals on a board is getting pretty hefty at the moment, and Letterboxd only lets us rate things out of 5, which is fine, but we feel like we have a lot of 3 and 3.5 movies, which isn't a bad thing. But we needed to sort of revamp and refresh the way that we do things. And we've decided to look at these movies in terms of 5 characteristics. And this sort of mirrors what we used to do in terms of the Real Deal segment, where we picked an element and talked about it and rated it good or bad. But in this way, we're going to be looking at the story and the script, which is 1, the characters and the performance as another, direction and tone as a 3rd, visuals and sound as a 4th, and just overall enjoyment as a 5th. And what we're going to be doing is we're either going to be giving our star of approval for that aspect, we're going to be withdrawing our star if we don't think it deserves it, or we'll give it half a star if we think that it was okay. By the end, you'll have a 5-star rating, I'll have a 5-star rating, and we can talk about where it might sit on the honor board as well. So, test running for the first time, the Fandom Portals rating system 2.0. First of all, the story and the script. This is the bones of the film, the plot, the world, and the writing. What do you think of this, Brash? Are you giving it a star? Are you giving it half a star? Or are you giving it no stars?
I would give this no stars, but I think the only thing that saves it is the symbolisms behind the actual story. So, because the pacings, I think for me, the pacing's like way off. Like, it doesn't spend a lot of time in the middle of the movie.
No. And the time that it does spend, a whole lot of walking.
Yep, a lot of walking, which actually I do. The one thing I do love, one thing that always gives you goosebumps is the little bee's nest on the back of the horse. I love that thing.
Fun fact, you know why they use that?
Why?
They use that because child actors have a certain amount of hours in the day that they're allowed to shoot. And because Sindel was so young, they could only have her on set for a certain amount of time. So in order to explain her absence, not being on screen, but still being on screen, they hid her in the back of a beehive on a horse instead of sitting her on the horse. So that was really clever, I thought, too. That was awesome.
Oh, that little beehive thing. I wanted one. But yeah, that middle part there, like they meet all the the other two characters so quickly, so abruptly. All right, here's Chock and here's Kanek. There's like that one scene I do like when the horse goat like runs off with Sindel and Chock goes to chase down. I love that scene. The scene that like I was like, huh? And that's the scene when Mace falls into the water, into that magical water.
Yeah.
But like the thing is, like you got Wicket and Sindel playing off in like the distance, like ages and ages away, and he like touches the water and just blinks into the water, and then Sindel's there, not even looking at him, goes, "My brother fell into the water," and it's like, how the did you know that he fell into the water? A, there was no splash, and B, you weren't even looking in that direction.
Well, that's exactly what they would have done it for. But also, I think it helps in Mace's journey,
trust and a bit more,
and his recklessness. So he was reckless to go and be curious and dip into the pond, and then afterwards he learns, okay, they had to come and save me. I shouldn't do that anymore. I shouldn't go and poke the beehive or poke the magical pond or don't touch things you don't know about. Every single scene you could put down to a lesson that parents would tell their kids. So on the surface, you could tell that water one is like telling kids don't go near the water, don't play near open water. That's dangerous. You might drown. But also you could look at it and say, reckless choices could put you in danger.
Yeah.
And then when you're talking about the scene with Kanek and, how Mace went in and just ordered her to join, and then Sindel came in and asked her to join, there's the difference between demanding something of somebody and asking them nicely. So there's that lesson as well. So every single little scene that you're looking at there could be a little parental lesson because this is dedicated towards children as well. But I think that the overall story, the plot structure of the story, extremely simple, very long-winded and paced.
I give it half star.
Okay. So half a star for you. I'll give it half a star as well because I think that generally the plot is very simple and it's meant to be because it's a children's movie. But I think that I'm giving it half a star because of the little micro lessons that you can take out of it, like what I talked about before. And I think that it definitely isn't worth a full star because that marriage would have been good between the actual plot and the little lessons that it's trying to teach. But unfortunately, that wasn't there. All right, next one, characters and performance. This is who we're following and how well they were played by the actors in the movie. So for this one, for me, the acting performances, don't mean to shit on child actors, woeful, bloody terrible. I think that the lines in these movies were delivered by kids and experienced kids, and as a result of that, it probably does play to a child viewing this. But for me, it was just like you could tell that they were reading it off the script, and that is, I feel like a dick saying no star. But for me, for the performances and the characters, I think I do love the Ewok characters. I do like that they chose, even though it's probably based on marketing, I do like that they chose Wicket to use because he wasn't a Skywalker. He wasn't a politically invested character. They chose to bring it right down to the forest moon of Endor and just have it isolated on this one place, which is what we told and said before that Star Wars really kind of needs to do. So I think I'll probably give it half a star for the use of Ewok characters, and I will not comment any further on the child actors. What about you?
See, I want to give it half star because of the Ewoks, like you said. But to be honest, I had to get 0, no stars. Because, like, yeah, the child actors, but yeah, their lines were just always so dreadful. But that was so common in that sort of time period. Back then, it was fine. And for kids, it'll be fine. But for me, watching it again, I was like, God, these guys are annoying.
Yeah. What a dry delivery.
Like Mace always yelling all the time. I liked how the characters looked. Both Mace and Sindel, because Mace definitely gives off that Luke Skywalker vibe, which helps sort of tie in that sort of Star Warsy theme. And even Sindel with the clothes she's wearing, white, reminds me of the white that Leia wears on Hoth. So it sort of reminded me of like a Luke and Leia sort of pairing. They both don't have parents anymore and stuff, and they have to sort of grow up and do anything basically like Luke and Leia have to do. So I do like all that, and I do like the Wicket, and then they got Logray in it. But like, I wish they had like Chief Chirper in it, or maybe Paplu, instead of just being Wicket and his family. It could have been Wicket, and like it didn't like necessarily have to be his family. It could have been Wicket, like Wicket, Paplu. I don't think Logray could have joined them, but there's a whole bunch of like other Ewoks that they could have used.
But yeah, I think that half a star is probably generous for me, and I think you giving it 0 stars kind of evens it out really, really well. All right. Direction and tone. For this one, for me, I'm going to give it 0, and that is because for me, unless it's a creative choice, the tone kind of has to be consistent throughout. And for me, I was looking at these thinking, is this my kid's entry point into Star Wars? Because these are targeted towards children. It's a children's movie. It is full of like family adventurous themes. And Caravan of Courage, you know, maybe, except for the sort of CGI that might scare him a little bit, but the Battle of Endor, like the tonal change and the themes that are in that, and the themes even in the Caravan of Courage as well. Just if you're going to set it for children as a tone, then you need to sort of maintain and keep it as a children-centric tone for me. And then the director's style, there was nothing really that sort of stood out to me in terms of amazing direction. They just kind of told the story as best that they could for $2 million, which was decent. They pulled it off. The narrative pacing as well was absolutely just sort of drawn out. It was an hour and a half where it could have probably been an hour, maybe 40 minutes. So for me, I'm giving it 0 for director and tone.
Yeah, 100% same. 0 for me as well. Like you were saying, how you didn't like the narrator.
Yeah, the narrator too. That's another point for me.
But I wish they had been, if they're going to go down the narrator path, they should have had the whole thing sort of narrated, not just certain parts to try and help you explain. Because like you can watch the whole entire movie without the narrator, and you get the gist of the movie. The narrator just comes in every now and then to
clarify
parts, and you're like, well, I sort of already got that.
Well, yeah, that might be because it is a children's movie, and maybe they're thinking the children won't get it. The adults will, but the children won't get it.
Well, this is a children's movie, so I should have thought of that before they made the movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So 0 for you.
Yes.
All right, let's go visuals and sound. This is what you see, what you hear, and how well you think it hits. So for me, I think I'm actually going to give this one half a star. I think the soundtrack is okay. It definitely sounds like Star Wars, even though it is not John Williams. I think that for the time, the special effects were pretty well used in terms of the forced perspective, the little minis that we used. The stop motion is a little bit janky, but still okay for a TV movie. For their budget that they used, pretty decent, not too bad. But the biggest thing for me, set design. Endor looked great. Every little piece of knick-knack, all of the costume designs for the Ewoks are very consistent with Star Wars. So I think I'll give it half a star. The only sort of thing against it, again, is that sort of janky, by today's standards, stop motion. And that's probably it. So half a star for me for that one.
I 100% agree. Half a star for me as well. Because for its time, like a lot of groundbreaking stuff was made in that time. You see the things like when they're fighting the spider.
Yes. You can see the fishing lines.
So hilarious.
Yeah, you can see the fishing lines attached to it.
But then I mean that sort of added to the enjoyment of it. I was like watching it back, and I was like, oh, that's so funny. I just love the Ewoks. They're amazing, creepy little bears they are. Like I'm so glad they gave him but I'm not sure if this helped or hindered the fact that they gave him eyelids for this movie. Because in the Star Wars they don't have eyelids, so they never blink, which is crazy enough as it is, but.
Insane night vision needed to hunt stormtroopers in Ewok Hunt.
They gave him eyelids in this, and I'm not sure if that made it worse or not. But I just love the creepiness to him as well. I like you can see some photos of them, and you're like, oh, it looks adorable, and then you see like close up of them, and you're like, oh my god, that's nightmare fuel.
I actually feel like Muppets and puppets and things like Ewoks like that, they're really either hit or miss with people. People either look at things like Labyrinth or this or anything Jim Henson, and they think to themselves, I'm not watching it because that is uncanny. I cannot see it. I can't see something that looks real but is alive. No way, no how. But then there are other people, like myself included, that look at it and think that's like really comforting and nice and endearing. And yeah, I think for me that's the half a star that I'm giving it there. All right, let's go for enjoyment. How does this land? How does it land then, and how does it land now? So this might include like rewatchability scores for you. I'm going to give it a full star for this because even though it is not the best movie in the world, I really enjoyed sitting down with this cuddly teddy bear picnic on the forest moon of Endor, watching just like, I'm not going to say mindless because there's a lot that you can sort of glean from the movie, and just watch a movie that was from a time before I was born and see what it was interesting to me to think about the things that the children were watching in the early 80s and the 90s and things like that. So for me, I had a good time with this. It was good to see a different sort of element of Star Wars. And I actually love that this was probably the bedrock for what Star Wars is today in terms of the stories that are coming out, the expanded universe, all that kind of stuff, to see if it landed. And it definitely did. There was lots of marketing involved with it. I think that for me, I'm giving it a full star for my personal enjoyment of the movie. What about you, Brash?
Oh, 100% star. Like for me, when I watch this again, just goosebumps. Like then there were parts that came up, like the nest on the back of the horse, or even the rock, how it made a trail through the sand. Just rewatching that, something like for me just stirred up so many like emotions in my, because like there's things in this movie that I can always remember, and I always remember Gorax walking down this, like just that how they slowed it down when he's trudging down the stairways to make all the people look like they're faster than a big hunking monster is. And like, this movie is always going to be one of my like top movies that I'll always cherish. Yeah. So definitely 1 star for me.
All right. So that means a total for myself for the movie, The Caravan of Courage, an Ewok Adventure. For me, I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. And for Brash, you gave it a 2 out of 5, which means our average for this movie is 2.25, which, if you want some context, we both rated Captain America Brave New World 2.5. I sit by it. I sit by it. All right, so let's put it on our honor board. That means that it is going to sit 2.25. Let's see where it goes. It is going to sit under Dragonheart and above Gabriel.
Above Gabriel, under Dragonheart.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be 15th.
It'll be 16th on our honor board list.
Yeah, fair.
All right. I would have asked you because technically Indiana Jones, Gabriel, and this have scored the same thing, but I think I know where you sit on Indiana Jones.
I reckon it should be lower.
Lower? It's almost at the bottom of our list. The only thing that's below it is Red One.
I'm actually starting to think that it should be lower than Red One.
All right. Well, with it rated, it is going to sit at the 16th position on our Fandom Portals honor board. Let's do our sign-offs. All right, guys, this has been Aaron and Brash at the Fandom Portals podcast. Thank you so much for joining in on our episode on the Ewok Adventure movies. Now, remember, you can get all of your Fandom Portals goodness, www.fandomportalspodcast.com. And on that website, it includes access to our monthly newsletter. Now, our first newsletter went out to all of our people that have subscribed so far. And it is in that newsletter where we're going to first announce all our giveaways when we reach 25 points for our Fandom Fact Face-Off. And you can also get amongst our community by following us on Threads, Instagram, and Reddit, always at Fandom Portals. Now, next week, Brash, we're going to change it right up. I'm going to start officially doing horror on the podcast. And by horror, I mean I'm going to sort of dive in nicely. We're going to be doing Ready or Not from 2019.
Ooh, yeah, no.
It's technically a slasher thriller, but I've been looking at it on my Netflix and it's sat in my library for a little while, and I want to give it a try. So next week, we'll be doing an episode on Ready or Not from 2019 and hoping to come with clean underpants.
And maybe one day I can work you up to watching all of the Conjuring saga. So all the Conjurings, all the Annabelles.
That is a hard...
The Nuns, like all of that.
I have seen one Nun movie.
Oh, have you?
I didn't make it 20 minutes.
Yep.
So seen as a very, loose word. Anyway, if you guys wouldn't mind, small podcasters like us absolutely thrive on word of mouth. So if there's somebody who you're thinking, oh shit, remember that Ewok Adventure movie that we used to watch? Send it to them because we're talking about it here on a podcast. And I actually don't know if any other podcast has talked about this ever. So send it to everybody. Go on. Send it to everybody. And make sure you're supporting the Geek Freaks Network as well. All right. Keep learning, keep growing, keep loving fandoms. Brash.
Yeehaw, which is Ewokese, or thank you, goodbye.
That's so sweet. Bye, everybody.